A year later, the two of you are still trading acerbic words publicly is a show of appalling leadership failure. You two know each other well. You have each other's telephone contacts. It is time you swallowed your pride and made the call to save our country. So I will leave the page one comment there, but it does continue on on page 17 of the Daily Nation. And if you're wondering what page that is those are the editorial pages. And is this the first time you've seen a page one comment? Okay, this is the first time for me. Maybe I haven't been paying enough attention to the dailies. Maybe in 2008 or maybe 2018. I don't know. First one for me here in studio. Let me put it that way. On AM Live. Right? And so it starts on page one, it continues on to page 17. And actually, let me flip there because the editorial cartoon is also one that could interest you. Page 17. Here we go. And matches. Each one has a matchstick in hand. There is fuel on the ground. You can see the fuel canisters here. Kenya Kwanza behind a podium with a microphone. Azmi on the other, Azmi One Kenya with behind a podium with a microphone. And should they strike the matches, then they, I suppose, together with ourselves, would go up in flames. So there we go. That is the page one comment. And also on the editorial page, we see neither the protesters nor state agencies should turn to violence. And this one is by Macharia Gaitho. Moi created a monster that remains a threat to national peace and stability to this day. Let me just take a look at the first few paragraphs and zoom in for you. I do beg your pardon for not doing that earlier so that you can get a better look. If it is true that President William Ruto presided over a meeting where it was resolved that politicians from his Kenya Kwanza coalition organize civilian resistance to the demonstrations called by opposition leader Raila Odinga, the stage is being set for a bloodbath. It is the height of criminal irresponsibility for the government to abdicate its role as the guarantor of safety and security for all and pass on the task to violent, unregulated mobs. This is the beginning of a dangerous descent into anarchy, lawlessness, and government of thugs, by thugs, for thugs. One may argue that Mr. Odinga's, quote, violent demonstrators deserve to be confronted by equally violent government supporters. That is the logic of those who are blind to the lessons of history. In the wake of the disputed 2007 elections, Kenya tipped perilously close to the precipice as the state lost control and allowed citizens, some organized and armed by politicians, to butcher one another. President Ruto and his predecessor at State House, Uhuru Kenyatta, were among 6 leaders hauled before the International Criminal Court to face charges of crimes against humanity. They were eventually freed, not because they were found innocent, but rather on technicalities and extremely puny prosecution cases. Mass murder, especially where the state becomes complicit and therefore unable to play its role as protector and defender of its citizens, is a road we must never again travel. Let us never forget the seeds of the 2007 violence was sown much earlier when then President Daniel Arap Moi in 1990 employed civilian militia in a vain attempt to protecting his one-party dictatorship from the campaign for democracy and human rights. By arming, funding and deploying warlords and ethnic criminal gangs to defend his regime, Moi created a monster that remains a threat to national peace and stability to this day. President Ruto may well be a keen student of Moism, but times and circumstances have changed. The days of leadership that employed brute force to remain in power rather than the legitimacy of popular mandate are long gone. So I haven't read the whole of it, but a good portion of it, and that is Macharia's opinion piece this morning. It is on page 17 of the Daily Nation, same page as we have had that page one comment run. And that is, again, page 17 of the Daily Nation. I don't know whether Chieng can hear me.
Yes, I can.
You can. Good morning.
Morning, how are you?
Mzuri sana. What do you make? I don't know. Did you have occasion to listen to me as I was speaking?
Yes, I did.
And so, what do you make of the page one comment from what you heard?
Enough is enough.
Yes.
I think looks like nobody wants. We anticipate violence, and I've seen lots of prophets of doom saying this country will not be the same after Friday. Should violence actually go, not violence, protest go on as planned. I think my tongue slipped and I said violence because there was a State House meeting where MPs were given authority to use whatever means possible to ensure there are no protests. I think, if last week's demos are anything to go by, where people were shipped to Kitengela, and the people in Kitengela were saying that they had never seen those people before, and the kind of violence we saw there, the people who are celebrating protests were like, hey, they have taken over from Kisi. So, people take it lightly, like it's there are those who are enjoying the moment, and I think mob psychology. But for the wiser people, and for the women who have to deal with the consequences in terms of looking after children, it is worrying. And then I appreciate the headline, enough is enough, because what then becomes of this country? What happens to the women and children? Let me not talk for the men of this country. What then becomes for the women and children of this country? The school term is in session. Children did not go to school. In as much as what Azimio are fighting for is right, women are wired differently. The moment you suspect conflict, you'd rather just go quiet and deal with what is for the sake of your children, because if you have more than two of them now, how do you even carry them when you're running away? So usually our default settings are peace, whatever the cost is. A lot of times that peace, by people, they're learned, they do not consider it peace because they say, peace is not absence of violence. But for women, we are naturally inclined to just want, lack of violence. That works for us because it at least it is possible to do a few things when there is no violence. It is possible to go to the shops. It is possible for status quo to be maintained. And I think I was, when I was looking at the editorials and all the other conversations around this, it is very testosterone heavy. And I was just thinking to myself, if Martha Karua, for example, was the one negotiating for Azimio, was the one not negotiating, the one at the peak of Azimio, we wouldn't be where we are.
You don't think so?
You saw what happened? I believe so. You saw what happened with Maraga and Uhuru. Judiciary and executive could not see eye to eye at some point. They would address each other through press conferences. Then when Martha Koome came in, she just did what women did, what women do. She just went down and they talked and she played how women play their cards, and things began to move for judiciary. Stories are told of Margaret Thatcher and how she managed to, run her government. She used to just host people for dinner. When people are eating, enjoying, making merry, she makes her case.
Okay.
And I think for me, this has presented a great opportunity for women leadership. It would have been interesting to see if there had been women at the helm. I am certain, 100% sure, we wouldn't be where we are today. If one of the parties was female, I can guarantee you.
So what I'm hearing you say is that this is the time for soft power.
This is the time for soft power. We will just stamp until when?
Okay.
Okay. So assuming we actually just stamp and it goes the Azimio way, how many lives will have been lost? So what was the purpose? And I have seen people taking us back to, it has always taken blood. Amani haiji ila kwa ncha ya upanga. You can never hear a woman reason like that. The other side, the government, on the other hand, have actually more to lose. They are the ones in power. The responsibility is bigger on their shoulders. They're the ones who are supposed to put us together. They're the ones who took oath of office. They're the ones who should be coming down and trying to bring us together. The rest, if I can be careless a bit, have the luxury to do whatever they want. You know, they're supposed to be brought back. They have the luxury. They can do anything. They don't owe anyone anything. They're ordinary citizens. Okay, of course, slightly elevated, but they have the luxury to do anything. They do not owe people. We are the ones who have bestowed responsibility on them, but they do not have, it's called de facto and de jure, one of those powers, you know, the one given by law. They do not have it. Those in government, it is their responsibility. So if they come to the level of Azimio, at now, instead of being the bigger people, instead of listening, okay, what is the issue? So how do we solve it? They also want to chest stamp, you know, like Azimio. So who's going to stop the other?
Okay.
Nyasi zitaumia, fahali wawili wapiganapo. This is not the time to be testing and showing us the way we have, our military have been in the barracks, relaxing. This is the time to unleash them. GSU, it's been long. Universities no longer go on riots and need GSU unleashed on them, you know. So now they unleash them on the people, creating special units like I've just seen you feature on news. It's not the time. It's time for soft power.
Okay. All right. And Azimio have the right to do anything within the confines of the law.
Yes,
I presume.
Within,
I presume is what you meant.
It's subject to interpretation. How
Okay.
you interpret within and how I interpret within depends on my circumstances. And I will justify it and defend myself, you know, and convince you that my within is right. But when you stand to speak, you will actually convince any listener that your within is the correct within, you know.
Okay.
So unfortunately, it's never clear. It's not black and white.
You're saying the law is subject to interpretation. So we'll wait for...
the law is clear. Never.
All right. Good morning, Bina.
Good morning.
Bina Masena, Executive Director, Badili Africa. You know, I was listening to Aching and she was talking about women and you know, Badili Africa works in this space of empowering women and the youth. Yeah. Your thoughts on this, what page 1 comment, enough is enough, the editorial. And this is the accompanying editorial cartoon illustration. Azimio, Kenya Kwanza on either side, both have matchsticks in hand, and should they strike the matches, then Kenya risks going up in flames, given the fuel I see here on the ground. Your thoughts?
I think it couldn't have been said any better because, you know, it's 1 year down the line and citizens had expectations. There were promises made that, you know, perhaps made people vote the way they decided to vote. And anytime we vote for different leaders, whether it's at the MCA level, whether it's at the MP level or at the presidential level, it's because of the promises they give in terms of bettering your current status, you know, when it comes to access to basic needs. I don't know, when we talk about basic needs, we're talking about access to food, access to shelter, you know, access to education, like basic need. And you don't even need anyone to tell you we are struggling. You know, if you just peruse through the newspaper, you'll see, you know, the food insecurity issues we have. I mean, the multiple issues that we are dealing with. So when you say enough is enough, is to mean the decisions that we're going to make are either going to take us forward or take us backward. And I think that's where we are. Because last weekend we were at the community and we're hosting this football tournament. And even just getting people's views in terms of what they think about, you know, the protest and whether they're even safe while they're going for the protest, and the fact that we've even lost lives, you know, trying to fight for your rights and then you're losing your life while at it. And people are telling you, you know, mimi siwezi kula peace. You know, sina food. Like, there's even no peace at home because things are not working. You know, I can't even stay in the house, you know. So, like, even my own home is not conducive for me to stay there. You know, so even just the lack of peace at home because you can't even access basic needs, you cannot, you know, you cannot not even go to school, is already pushing you outside, you know, outside your house. So I think, you know, it's that time where we have to reflect on the decisions that we are making right now that are either going to, you know, break us or build us up. Yeah.
It comes back to the public participation conversation, right? Yes. Wakenya wanasema wamechoka, but is it that they feel that nobody is listening or that nobody cares? And so that is the conversation we'll have. Let me quickly take a look at what the other dailies have to say on the subject. I don't know, did you have anything to add on the subject, Diana, or I can keep it moving?
On enough is enough. I think the dailies and the leadership of both government have prepared us for this. We've had headlines like showdown looming, okay, Now it is time for shutdown. Now it is enough is enough. So drumming up, drum roll for war and things like that. But also, like Bina has indicated, truly enough is enough for Kenyans. People feeling deserted by their representative and nowhere to go. Based on the topic of today, they went to the executive, they engaged with parliament. Where else to go? Enough is enough. Let us wait to see what our country is doing. But very, very sad place to be as a nation. We've been here before, and I think even the religious leaders are calling on us to look inside and embrace other means as opposed to what we are seeing in the dailies. The 5 men that are supposed to steer us in or out of enough is enough. Yeah.
All right, let's see how Taifa Leo has put it. And here we go. They say, imetosha. Tahariri, which I imagine translates to editorial or page 1 comment. Hatujui iwapo nchi hii itaendelea kuwa pamoja au itasambaratika baada ya maandamano yaliyopangwa dhidi ya serikali kuanzia kesho hadi Ijumaa. Maisha ya zaidi ya Wakenya milioni 50 yako mikononi mwa watu wawili, Rais William Ruto na Waziri Mkuu wa zamani Raila Odinga. Maneno yao pekee yanaweza kuamua ikiwa Kenya itafuata mwelekeo wa mataifa mengine yaliyosambaratika au itajinyakua kutoka kwenye ukingo wa maangamizi. So that is the front page of the Taifa Leo. Accompanying it is an image of Raila Odinga. Sitaki nusu mkate sasa, asema Raila. An image there of the ODM party leadership as well as Wiper. Who else is represented there? Well, yeah, there they are. And viongozi wa muungano wa Azimio la Umoja wakiongozwa na seneta wa Nairobi Edwin Sifuna wazungumza na wanahabari katika wakfu wa Jaramogi Oginga Odinga Nairobi jana. And if I could just take a look at the first few paragraphs penned by Wanderi Kamau na Benson Madheka, viongozi wa muungano wa Azimio la Umoja One Kenya wakiongozwa na Raila Odinga wamepuuza wenzao wa Kenya Kwanza wanaodai wanaongoza maandamano ya kushinikiza kuundwa kwa serikali ya nusu mkate, wakisema hawana nia ya kushirikiana na serikali quote haramu. Wabunge wa Azimio wakilitaja kauli za baadhi ya viongozi wa Kenya Kwanza kwamba Raila anataka handisheki na Rais Ruto kama kisingizio kilichopitwa na wakati. Walisema Kenya Kwanza inatumia swala la handisheki kuhepa swala tata la gharama ya maisha linalo wasukuma raia kuandamana. Okay. So they are saying Kenya Kwanza is using the handshake presentation to distract from the cost of living issues. Okay, Raia ashtaki Raila Uhuru. Yes, that somebody went to court in an effort to stop the protests. The court declined to issue conservatory orders, not conservatory orders in general, but to suspend the demos or in any way interfere until an inter-parties hearing is held. Ezekiel Odera akosa nyota Tanzania. Polisi wasitisha crusade yake Arusha wakisema anahusishwa na mauaji. So that is Taifa Leo at the very top. On the side here, I see vifo vya Shakahola vyafika zaidi ya 400. Hii ni baada ya miili mingine 12 kufufuliwa huku ufukuzi ukiendelea msituni humo. Kufukuliwa, I beg your pardon. Kufukuliwa. Kiswahili sio mdomo changu, but I have tried, Diana. I have really tried. All right, let's take a look at the Business Daily. Now, Kenya plans a new 140 billion shilling syndicated loan facility. Trade and Development Bank to arrange new facility. Move comes days after closing a similar 70.8 billion shilling loan. This one is by Julian's Amboko. Kenya has embarked on a fresh drive to raise funds through a syndicated loan just days after closing a similar $500 million deal, which translates to 70.8 billion shillings arranged by a consortium of banks. Also, on the front page of the Business Daily is the page one comment, enough is enough, stop beating the war drums. On the ticker, tough times for workers as payroll taxes rise slowest in 7 years. Payroll taxes for the financial year ended June grew at slowest pace in at least 7 years, excluding the pandemic period, signaling a tough economic setting where firms are struggling to generate new job opportunities and raise workers' pay. Kenya to bid to host Africa's payment platform in push against US dollar, and US fund to build 5,000 Kenya affordable houses. The IFC is set to make an equity investment worth 2.56 billion shillings in a US-owned Southern Africa asset management that is developing 5,000 affordable houses in Kenya. And before I move away from business, back page of the Daily Nation, Kerry nets a record 220 billion shillings in June amid hard times. This one is penned by none other than a business and technological editor, Nation Media Group, Julian Zamboko. The Kenya Revenue Authority collected a historic 220.6 billion shillings from taxes last month, buoyed by the release of billions of shillings in income tax dues for public servants by the government. The tax collection for June has surpassed the previous record of 203.8 billion shillings, which was set in June last year. Also on the back page, MPs begin probe into dubious deals at NHIF. These include fraudulent payment of medical claims and irregular tendering processes. An image here of the National Assembly Health Committee Chairperson Robert Pukose on November 1st, 2022. The committee hereby invites members of the public to submit memoranda on the specific terms of reference of the inquiry. Okay, let's take a look now at, we've looked at Business Daily, Taifa Leo, Daily Nation. Let's take a look at the Standard. Pressure mounts on Uhuru over Azimio protests. Security chiefs have been tasked to investigate the ongoing demonstrations with allegations that the former president could be at the center of resource mobilization. Also on the front page of the Standard, quest for gold gathers steam. Kenya turns into a conduit of illegal South Sudan treasures. Foreigners rush to Marsabit for precious metal. Shakahola death toll breaches the 400 mark. And I don't know, do you have anything to say on this? Shakahola, have we forgotten the tragedy that is Shakahola? We take a break, but when we come back, we finish up with the Standard. Then we take a look at the Star and People Daily quickly. Then we get into the topic of conversation, and that is on public participation. How do we safeguard your voice in the legislative process? Enough is trending on Twitter. Just looking at the front page of the Daily Nation, they say people to watch. The country's fate lies in these men's hands, and that is Raila Odinga, Kithure Kindiki, Nuruddin Haji, Japhet Kome, and on the other side as President William Ruto. Azimio leader Raila Odinga and President William Ruto have put their feet down on the planned protests. Kenyans will be watching if they, together with the country's top security chiefs, Kindiki, Haji, and Kome, will let the nation slide into anarchy. Not just Kenyans, the UN. You saw the statement that was made by the UN Commission. Is it Human Rights Commission on Human Rights?
The Office of the High Commission on
Office of the High Commission on Human Rights. Okay, yes. There we go. As promised, where were we with the Standard? I think we were done. Let's take a look at the Star. Oh dear. Okay. I will read it. I'll read the copy that is in my hand here. Hardliners blocking Ruto and Raila truce. Pundits say lieutenants who fear losing relevance are taking extreme positions. And if we take a look at People Daily, this is their headline. Security for Raila allies withdrawn. Kindiki says politicians won't enjoy protection while breaking the law. Top police commanders meet ahead of demos. Officers warn protests wearing down personnel. Azimio vows mass action on. Starting on Wednesday, be ready for game-changing maandamano. In the crosshairs, James Orengo, Gladys Wanga, Ochilo Ayako, Matthews Owili. And let me see. I think I'll leave it there. Shot in the arm for Kisumu top hospital after Nyong'o goes under the knife. Okay, and at the very top here, it's a miracle for Dare, quote, miracle, as he walks to freedom. I will leave this here. Steer us back to the topic of conversation, and we're fully empaneled. We have Achieng Osogo, governance and political analyst. She is joining us virtually. We have Bina Maseno, executive director, Badili Africa, Annabelle Njoki, advocate Diana Gishengo, national coordinator, TISA. But Annabelle, because I gave the other panelists opportunity to respond to the Enough is Enough page 1 editorial comment on the front page of the Daily Nation. Your thoughts? Do you support it?
Kenyans are tired. Businesses are suffering. Like we were just discussing behind the scenes. Personally, I'm going to work today waiting to hear what my employer says about tomorrow. Are we coming to the office? Are we working from home? Which, in our line of work, depending on what it is you're handling, causes a lot of disruption. I am not the only Kenyan who is feeling like that. FKE have aired their grievances, KEPSA have aired their grievances, KMA are also feeling some type of way. So let them find a solution that works for the both of them. However, if they decide to proceed with, if those who are going for Mandamano tomorrow decide to proceed with it, we wait to see how the government will respond. I was here on Thursday. I made my position clear. One, I felt the government needed to spend the weekend working on their strategy in terms of how to address this from a communications perspective and from a tactical perspective. It remains to be seen whether they will have done that. As for Azimio, they also need to figure out how to do this peacefully, because it's meant to be a peaceful demonstration. So they need to figure out how to call their people to order and do this peacefully. And if they're not going to do it peacefully, at what point do they take responsibility? And I acknowledge that the United Nations has expressed certain concerns, but my concern also is, in as much as we encourage, or the United Nations position is that peaceful demonstrators should not be antagonized, should not be violated, their guidelines still leave room for use of force where these demonstrators have, or the demonstrations have gotten out of hand. And we have seen instances where they have gotten out of hand to the point where the police themselves are running for dear life. So even as we're calling for respect human life, let the demonstrators also be cognizant of the fact that other Kenyans who are not joining them in the demonstration equally have rights that need to be respected. So that's where I'm at.
Okay. I'm just trying to pull up that statement that was released last week, I believe, on Friday. Should be last week on Friday. As I do that, I just wanted to make quick mention so that we get into the conversation of two stories in the Daily Nation. One is on page 8. Senators criticize Kingi's leadership. Speaker accused of being beholden to the executive. Committee sitting suspended over budget cuts. And it tells us, as the Senate resumes plenary sittings today after a 2-week recess, it faces division and infighting over the leadership of Speaker Amason Kingi. The Speaker has been facing backlash from senators, mostly from the minority side, over his handling of Senate matters, including the Parliamentary Service Commission's budget cut for Senate committees. There is a quote further down here on the page. Kingi has completely abdicated his duty and reversed all the gains we made in the last 2 parliaments. Moses Kajwang quoted there. And on page 10, and I thought this one, Diana Gishengo would particularly be keen on. It's highlighted on the front page as what austerity show of opulence at state boards members in